Hi, everyone. Welcome to the That's Allowed podcast. I'm your hostess, Dr. Adrienne McKeon, and today we're here with Nselaa Ward. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Nselaa Ward. Just to give you a little information about me, I'm a business architect. I'm out of Atlanta, Georgia. Before I was a business architect, I was an attorney. I did business bankruptcy and criminal law. During that time, I was able to free over 300 years of Black lives from the criminal industrial complex. I also worked for the National Organization for Women, the largest women's organization in the world. So yeah, that's a little bit of information about me.
Fabulous. I'm so glad you've joined us today.
Yay.
So I'll start with my usual first question and we'll just see where that takes us. Okay.
Okay.
So what story is the world not getting?
What story is the world not getting? I think right now the world is not really understanding where all these protests are coming from. You know, people are trying to figure out what's going on. There's a lot of people that's angry, a lot of people that's confused about why everybody else is angry. And I think, understanding really what is at the heart of protesting and what type of impact it has is the story that's not being told right now.
Absolutely. So let's dive into that. Why are people protesting right now?
Well, on the surface level is that people are upset because there's many, at least for the Black, in regard to the Black Lives Matter movement, because that's where I'm most visible at. People are upset because people are dying. We've been dying for forever, and the best analogy I heard about it was when, for years and years and years, you've been telling your mother, that dad is hurting me, dad is abusing me, he's molesting me, he's doing all these bad things to you, and when your mom never believed you, and then all of a sudden, when you're an adult, your mom finally says, you know what, I believe you, I believe you, and now I see everything that your dad has been doing. And it doesn't mean that you love your dad any less, and it doesn't mean that you're mad at your mom. You just feel like, oh, thank God you finally believe me, thank God you finally see me, because there's been this long history of people, feeling like what has been happening to Black people are things that's made up. They feel like, well, what did you do to cause this? And or maybe you're just seeing it, in a bad light, or so this is the time when America is finally like, oh, I see what's been happening to you, and I believe you. What can I do to help?
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And it's like, mom finally walked in on
Mhm.
something. And that's kind
Exactly.
of what I think what happened for a lot of at least, white America is that they
Hmm.
see these videos and they kind of sort of go, oh my gosh, what's going on
Hmm.
here? Well, we've been telling you this has been going on for a long time.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, but now that I've seen it,
Yes.
now it's real to me.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
you know and sometimes there's this guilt, as parents, when we see things that happen to our children, and we start to feel bad that we didn't do something about it before. And I think what's happening with a lot of people, a lot of white people in America, is all of a sudden they're feeling this guilt, but they're not sure exactly what they feel guilty about.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard to have these conversations because nobody wants to feel bad, nobody wants to feel guilty. And I think that the story has kind of been twisted to believe that white people have to feel guilty just for being white, you know, and that's not the case. That's not the case. So I definitely think the story that we have to have is the conversation around it. To say, hey, mom, thank you for seeing. I'm so glad you saw this. Now, can we work on it? Can we, what can we do to stop this?
Yeah. So how has that affected you personally?
Oh my God, I grew up in this. I grew up in this community. Even though I was an attorney for going on a decade, that's not really how my story started out. I started out as a child sex worker between the ages of 12 and 19. So this is something, that I've been seeing in my community all my life. It's almost been normalized, to me. And a lot of times what happens with protesting is that, when you've been normalized to abuse and disrespect and injustice, you start to believe that it's hopeless. You start to believe, okay, that's just the way that society is. We just got to figure out a way around it. And you just become used to it, and you stop fighting it, or you stop trying to get what's right. One of the benefits of protesting is that when people start to stand up in large numbers around the world and say, hey, I want to be counted, this has happened to me too, or I've seen this happen, or this is real, it all of a sudden wakes you up to say, you know what, It is real, and it can change when you've normalized it in your system. And previously you may have thought, there's nothing we can do about it. All of a sudden you realize that, hey, we can do something about it. That's why it's so important for people to stand up and protest, and even if you don't see the change happen immediately, because seeing it even over time lets people know, okay, you know what, we can do something about this. This doesn't have to be normalized anymore, and it doesn't have to be everyday life.
Yeah, I would say that happened for a lot of women during the Me Too movement,
Mhm.
where there was suddenly this conversation where we could go, hey, yeah, no, nobody was interested in my story before, but you want to hear now? Because, man, I got them.
Exactly. Exactly. It becomes we create this safe space that we didn't have before to be able to tell the story and to create an action plan.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's been really heartening, I think, for me, especially as someone who focuses on the power of storytelling and
Yeah.
sharing our truth, to see all these people standing up and saying, hey, this happened to me. Or, happened for me, however you want to phrase things, but like
Mhm.
these experiences are real and they affect our lives and they affect the people around us as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just to
That's
be
absolutely
listened
right.
to, like you said, I think that's the real key is
Mhm.
just to know that people are listening and people are finally paying attention and going, "Hey, we care.
Mhm.
We care." And
Mhm.
I think
And it's
that's
amazing to see that people care. That's the next biggest thing that has created so much change, is because I think there was this consensus that nobody cares about what happens to Black people. Nobody cares if you got beat up. Nobody cares if you got arrested. Nobody cares if you went to prison for something that you didn't do. Nobody cares if you're abused. And when we see all of these people stand up, it gives you hope. Literally, it gives you hope, which is why we're seeing more and more people protesting, because that's a sign of hope. That's a sign that people are actually starting to believe again. Because and when we see a lot of people that don't look like us standing with us, that feels amazing.
yeah.
That feels amazing.
And so how does it feel to you when you say Black Lives Matter and someone says back to you, all lives matter?
What's interesting is that I literally just had a circumstance, with this, same situation. So I went to a campaign event for my senator, a senator that represents me here in Georgia, and I literally didn't know about all the details of her like what she was running her campaign on before I started going to her events. I just thought she was my senator, and I just wanted to, know how she was going to represent me while she was in office. And we went there, and she started talking about Black Lives Matter, and I was really shocked because, a lot of times when we're on, so especially in quarantine, everything is social media, everything is on, online and by a computer. So while we're in quarantine, we're in this echo chamber, around us, where we only hear echoes of what we believe. So I had been surrounded by people that support other Black people that support, Black people, will to live and not to be murdered or beaten up. So when I went to this event, I was literally very shocked that there were people that didn't agree with Black lives. I was like, there's really people that don't agree? Like, people are
Right?
opposing. Like, what does that mean? Does that mean they don't think Black Lives Matter? I'm confused. I was really confused. So we went there, and she started talking about how Black Lives Matter, people that support Black Lives Matter were Marxists, that they were communists, that we were anti-nuclear family, that we were terrorists. And I was like, oh my God, I can't believe she's saying this out loud. Like, I was really going through shock in the beginning.
Yeah.
So, and myself and my friend that came with me, we were the only, Black people that were there. Which I was shocked about as well. So, we stood up and asked her a question, like, well, what are you going to do to protect the Black lives in this state that are being abused and that are being murdered? And everybody in the room literally got angry. They started, like, it was almost like as soon as they saw that we supported Black lives, I'm pretty sure they suspected it beforehand, but they weren't sure, which is why they responded so quickly. They was
Uh-huh.
like, she better not say something, but let's see what she said. Like, they were already, I could tell they were a little bit already prepared, right?
Mm.
So, as soon as they saw that we supported Black lives, it's just like something triggered in them, and they got upset, and then they started surrounding us. Like, they were trying to lock us like into this circle.
Yeah.
They started screaming "All Lives Matter" at us. They started screaming Kelly, 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 like they were saying her first name, Kelly Loeffler. They were saying, like, some people even tried to say, they were trying to say Black lives ain't shit, but they couldn't get enough people to agree with them about that. But what was happening is that, Kelly Loeffler, she was actually kind of encouraging them to do it, because what she was doing, when we asked her that question, is that, she was basically saying that, hey, these people that support Black Lives Matter, they're trying to take your livelihood. They're trying to take, what you've been working on, all your life, and what your family has been trying to build. They're trying to change the way things are. And if you don't want all of this stuff taken from you, if you don't want your rights taken from you, if you don't want your money taken from you, your legacy taken from you, then you have to oppose this. So when we started standing up, asking questions in support of Black Lives Matter, they felt all of a sudden like this threat, like we were coming to take from them, and you would hear that even in some of the things that they were yelling at us at the time. So the only thing that we could do at the time was just kind of, stand, it was only two of us, kind of stand our ground, because they were surrounding us, and just say, you know what, Black Lives Matter then, Black Lives, like that was really like all we could do to just kind of to ground and create that foundation for ourselves. And they were yelling all lives matter at us. And I realized, because a lot of them, they were older, like some of them were even on walkers and, in wheelchairs, or 80 years old, 90 years old, they literally felt fear that we were trying to take something away from them. So when I hear that, I know that and even when they were saying it, I know that it was based on people creating fear in them about what Black Lives Matter meant. Because all of the stuff that she was saying Black Lives Matter meant, she was like, when they say Black Lives Matter, this is what they meant. And the first thing that happened in my head was like, that's not what we meant. No, and we're not trying to take from you. We're not trying to, take from your kids. We're not trying to take your money. We're not trying to take your legacy. We're not trying to do any of that. We're just saying Black Lives Matter. Like a lot of people say, Black Lives Matter also, that's what they don't understand. And I knew that what they were saying was coming from a place of fear. And that if we were able to be in a room where we didn't have somebody that was using the fear mongering, we could have had a conversation about, this is what I mean when I say Black Lives Matter. And then they could have had a conversation, well, this is what I mean when I say all lives matter. And we could have been like, we say Black Lives Matter also because all lives can't matter until Black Lives matter, and we could have come to a better place. But we weren't able to do that with people creating that fear and encouraging that fear. And I think that's what's happening around the country right now. There's people creating fear, honestly, on both sides. And we have to really kind of tune out all of that fear mongering and have conversations with each other.
So how do we begin to do that? I mean, how do you diffuse that fear? I think you're absolutely right that the fear is, oh, these people are coming to take away, what's mine. And okay, if you're used to a certain level of unfair privilege, maybe that's a little bit true. Maybe some things are going to get taken away, but you know what? That's okay, because they weren't really yours to begin with. And so if you can confront that, then you can kind of recognize, hey, maybe some equality would be a good thing, for everybody. But
Yes.
how do we begin to just begin that conversation of, here's what I mean when I say this? And, how do we, I guess the question really is, how do we begin to listen to what the other side is saying when all they're saying to us is like, you mean this, you're saying this, and that's not at all what we're saying?
Right.
How do you start from there?
That's a really, really good question. One of the things that we've started recently is this series, this tour. It's called White Women Can We Talk, right? And basically, we're having just small group conversations. Well, it started out small, and it's turning like to this huge big thing, right? Because now, like, we was like, oh, we just gonna have these small group conversations with 5 to 10, people at a time, so that we can just really talk out our issues and tell each other what we really mean when we say certain things. And now, over 10,000 people have seen it, and it's even expanding more because we've been invited to Nigeria to have the conversations, to Australia, and to London to have the conversation as well. So it's even going worldwide because people are really, really eager to have these small group conversations. But one of the places that it rooted from was that I realized, when even in my experiences, that there would be certain environments that I used to walk into, and I would start to get this fear. And a lot of that would happen when I was around white men. As soon as if I went into a room of all white men, I started to feel anxiety. I started to feel like something bad was going to happen. And a lot of times that came from not being exposed to them that much. Like, I didn't grow up with a whole bunch of white men in my life. I didn't grow up going to these meetings and going to events and interacting and connecting with them. I never had that experience with connection. And it wasn't until, I actually went to law school and actually working for the National Organization for Women actually exposed me to a lot of white women that I didn't have exposure to before, right? Because that was, the majority of the people in that organization were white women. That was their large base. So all of a sudden I start seeing a different perspective. And then when I went to law school is when I started getting exposed to more white men. And, just interacting with them and having the exposure ease some of my fear and ease some of my anxiety, and on both parts, with white women and with white men in both areas. And I felt like if a lot of the fear that we have comes because we're creating these stories in our head about other people because we haven't had that experience. We haven't had direct experiences with them. So we create stories based on stories we've heard, based on media, based on television, based on something our friend experienced that they told us about. We're creating all these stories about what's going to happen and what is happening because we don't have that exposure. We don't have the ability just to get to hang out and spend time with each other. So myself and my sister in the movement, Miss Triana Arnold James, we decided to put together this tool where we just hang out together, where Black women hang with white women, and we just talk and, and build experiences together. And the surface level is that we have the conversation online, but the deeper level is that we actually start to build experiences in person together so that we just get to know each other and we don't have so much fear around each other. So I think the first step, now this is just the initial first step, there's other steps that we have to do as well around organizing and political equity and financial equity and things of that sort. But the very, very, very first step is to get exposure with each other and say, hey, can we talk? Just like, well, can we talk? Can we talk? Can we have this conversation? Can I hang out with you? Can I sit down with you a little bit? Can I come to your house? And even if it's not coming to your house, can we go to somewhere and have coffee? Get to know each other so that we can take a little bit of that fear away and get to hear each other's stories. Once we start to hear each other's stories, our perspective changes, right? So I think that's the very initial thing that we have to do.
I love that. And I completely agree. I think it's so important to just have personal conversations and start to get to know each other as humans instead of these constructs that we have in our minds about each other. And I also love, there's this thing that Brene Brown taught me that like I use in everything now, which is the story I'm telling myself is. It's a perfect way to start a conversation that's difficult because you're owning your own bias there. You're saying the story I'm telling myself about you is.
I like that.
Because that way you're owning like, hey, I don't really know what's going on with you, but here's what I think is going on because this is the story I'm telling myself. It's like if you think your friend is mad at you and you start the conversation with the story I'm telling myself is I said this to you and then you didn't write back. So now I think that you're probably upset about what I said. And that gives them a chance to go, actually, no, I just put down the phone because I had to go eat. So
yeah. Yes. How many times does that happen? All the time. Like we create stories to fill in the blanks when we don't know, and that's what's happening on a national racial level as well.
Yes.
Is that we create these stories when we don't know.
Absolutely, and these stories are being created for us.
They are.
Absolutely, they're being constructed to create fear and division. That is absolutely happening.
That's so true for political gain at this point, and sometimes even outside of the election is created for other gains. But right now people are using it for political gain.
Absolutely. Can you say more about that?
Well, when I say for political, like for example, Kelly Loeffler, one of the major issues is that she received her seat was a gift, in Georgia. She was appointed because somebody else was unable to do the job. So she felt like the best way to get her political seat or to secure her political seat was to create this fear, this division, to make people feel like if they didn't want this taken away from them, because a lot of times if you can't get people to respond out of love, you can get people to respond out of fear. And in all actuality, those are look, it was all of a sudden about to go off.
Oh, you're good.
these new max. So if we can't get them to respond out of love, we try to get them to respond out of fear. And those really are, everything is either based out of love or fear. And most people don't really know how to control love, but they know how to control fear.
Yeah.
So they use fear to get their outcome. So she's using that, for example, the fear of what happens if Black people are, if they get their agenda met. They use that politically. She's been using that politically. I see Trump doing the same thing a lot of times. He's using it politically. He's creating this fear, on both sides. One of the biggest things that I get afraid of is that, what happens, after November 3rd, and, if Trump doesn't win. Like, I'm a little afraid that, there's going to be some type of civil war that people are going to try to create simply because the politicians and the media have created so much fear. And when people are in a position of fear, they fight or flight. They either fight or flight, So people are preparing to fight, and it's going to create this internal, civil war around this country, simply because, they're afraid. I think the key is that we really, instead of digging into that emotion of fear, because that's the easy reaction to get, really deep diving into how we can get a handle on or manage love. That's the hardest thing, is that they don't know how to manage love, so they just use fear by default. But if we learn how to manage love, then we'll be doing something really powerful.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm more than a little afraid about that, because I think you're right. When people are scared, and in this country, there's a lot of people with guns, and with people with guns are scared, very bad things happen.
Yes, especially around quarantine.
Yes. So I was in Cote d'Ivoire in 1999, when there was a military coup, and suddenly there's people in the street with guns, and it's a civil war, and it happened like that. It was a very stable country. No one ever, no one saw this coming. No one suspected a thing, and it was just like that. And so I've seen this happen. I know how quickly things can turn when there's that powder keg of people, really scared, and there's a lot of division and misinformation going around. So yeah, I'm worried. Like,
what was really an eye opener for me is that when we first went into quarantine and everybody was running to the grocery store for like resources and things of that sort, we had a Bass Pro Shop like very close to us, and I saw lines and lines and lines of people waiting at Bass Pro trying to get guns, and I was like, why are they trying to get guns? Everybody's trying to get toilet paper and rice and canned goods. Like, I was confused. Like, what's going on here? Why are they getting guns? And the people that were going to the store to, getting guns didn't look like me. I was like, what's happening here? That's when I start realizing, that fear was starting to really, really take over people's lives. Yeah. And I have friends on both sides, conservative, liberals, and independents everywhere. So like a lot of my friends are, they're Trump supporters, and I'm not the type of person that I'll stop being friends with somebody because they have a different political perspective, and even they have been contacting me, and they said, they like, Nselaa, you really need to because I've always been anti-guns. Like, I don't like guns in my house. I don't like guns anywhere. Like, I don't like guns, right? And they're like, you got to get a gun because, we don't know what's going to happen after November 3rd. I was like, why do I got to get a gun? They was like, make sure you have some type of weapon. You need a gun in your house, and you need to stock up, on your defensive supplies. And I'm like, are y'all serious? And then I saw where they were planning to kidnap, and the governor, and try her for treason, and I was like, oh, this is, they really are planning something, after the election. So yeah, it's definitely serious, know.
Here in Seattle, I I have a lot of friends who were in the CHAZ or the CHOP, whatever you want to call it, and it was peaceful. It was lovely. I visited a couple of times. It took my kids. There was nothing to fear there. And then some white supremacists started coming in with guns, and suddenly it became a very scary place to be. And now, of course, then they can come in and say, oh, well, there's this, lawless zone where all this horrible stuff is happening. And it's all, because of the Black Lives Matter movement. And I'm going, okay, guys, No, that's completely wrong. And anyone who was there could tell you that that's completely wrong. But now they have this ammunition to
Mm-hmm.
use and to say, you should be scared of these people. This is a scary thing. These are scary
Mm-hmm.
people. And
Yes.
again, it's just that cognitive bias that you see what you wanted to see in the first place.
Yep.
Right?
Whether you think it will or you think it won't, you're right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Exactly right.
That's the truth. It's like, if they believe it will or if they believe they won't, if they're right.
You're right.
It's based on our personal bias.
Yeah.
Mhm. And until we start having these conversations, everybody's going to keep moving forward with their personal bias.
Yeah. And the thing is, what you resist persists. And so the more you focus on the thing that you don't want, the
Mm-hmm.
more real it becomes. And
Mm-hmm.
so, what we really need to be focusing on, I think, instead of like defund the police, let's focus on fund the things that actually need to be funded to make this a society worth living in. Let's,
Mm.
really work together to figure out, what do we want policing to look like? What do we want our society to look like? And start pooling our resources and just making that happen, right?
Mm-hmm. I agree. We definitely need to focus on the things that we do want to fund. One of the reasons that I think that people are talking about defunding the police is because of the history of where policing came from.
Yeah.
Understanding its basis in maintaining slavery.
Yes.
And the slave trade
Hmm.
and plantations. That has a very deep impact when you understand that the whole purpose of them originally was just to keep people of color or people like me or Black people, African Americans in slavery and in chains, and to watch how it's progressed over the
Yeah.
centuries. It's scary and it's sad and it's frustrating. I think that's another story that isn't being told is what do people mean and what is to be understood about defunding the police. I think a lot of people means that it'll mean that there won't be any police in the neighborhoods. There'll be no police anymore. We won't have any safety. We won't have
Right.
anybody to protect us. And really, defunding the police doesn't mean that police will still have their jobs. It means that we stop, equipping them with all of the, this heavy machinery and military equipment and things that are really militia oriented, and preparing for war when you're dealing with citizens. Like
Yes.
police should not be preparing to go to war with citizens because that encourages citizens to go to war with each other,
Yep.
right? Which is why we have the civil, scare, that's really pretending to, really come from all these Black Lives Matter movements, which is not. Um, so I do think that we have to get people out of the mind of war. We need to get
Yeah.
rid of all of this war equipment. And I think that when we talk about defunding the police, that's what we're really focusing on is getting rid of all of this equipment and forcing police officers to build relationships and
Yeah.
connections with the people that they are serving. I think that's important. But I think there's different ways that we could potentially reframe it.
Hmm.
Because it's not about taking police jobs. It's not
Right.
really about the police. It's about building relationships and connections. And sometimes when we have big, all this military equipment in the way, it's hard to build a relationship with the person that is supposed to be protecting you.
Yeah. So let's do
Mhm.
a visualization exercise, which is what I
Oh,
like to end on.
all
And
right.
so usually this is, for someone's personal story, but I would love for you to kind of imagine for us what policing could be like, what a society that is actually equal could look like. So let's close our eyes for a moment. And I'm going to kind of wave my magic wand. And so now everything is as it should be. We have actual equality. We have a police force or whatever we want to call it that actually protects and serves all people and is actually here to help us. And so I want you to just tell me what you see, what you hear, what you feel in this new state where things are as they should be.
Mm, that's powerful. I think when the negativity disappears, because it will, we'll be able to focus on abundance, right?
Mhm.
So instead of having the police do things, like bring a militia to protest and all the other things that have been happening. Our police will be a part of the community and they'll help us build our community instead. The same equipment and the money that, that we're giving to use all of this, heavy militia equipment, we could use to help police to be able to build new fences and build new buildings, and build community projects. Working more through mediation than, trying to attack the community. Working together, having more conversations, being in communities where they have a connection to, which, sometimes that may mean that police are only policing the communities that they grew up in or have some type of connection to or that they live in. I do know that sometimes police feel a little uncomfortable about that. But if we're coming in a utopia, if we're talking about a utopia, people will be more comfortable with police in their own communities. I think that I think that that would be what my utopia looks like as far as policing is concerned.
Yeah. So imagine for a moment that in this utopia, you get pulled over, and instead of getting a ticket, they explain to you that there's a taillight out and they're going to fix it for you. So just hold
Mm,
tight. And they've got the equipment in their truck and they come out and they fix your taillight for you. And they say, have a great day.
mm.
How do you feel when I say that?
Blessed, grateful, eager, to continue this journey. I actually had a situation like that, similar previously, and it wasn't that he was fixing anything for me. I remember I was having a really, really bad day. This is actually when I was still practicing law. Like I was on my way to court, and I knew that day that I was going to have like some heavy topics that I was talking about in court, and I just really, really didn't want to go. So I had prepared myself in advance. I was like, I'm going to wear all white because I want to create light energy and I want to create a positive experience. And while I was on the way to court, and like the whole time I was saying my affirmations beforehand and trying to create this experience that I wanted, even though I somewhat felt like a negative experience was going to happen. And I ended up getting stopped by a police officer. And I was like, oh my God, I'm trying to create this. This is before he came to the cross. I'm trying to create this negative, this positive experience. And it's already starting to be negative. Oh my God. I was like, oh, I was so upset. And he came up to the car. He was like, you switch lanes there in a place that you weren't supposed to switch lanes, and you were about to turn, which could have, um, resulted in an accident. And I was really pissed off in my head, but I had to breathe for a minute. And I was like, you know what? He's only the reason that he's here is so that he can make us all safer. And I said, you know what? I said, I'm grateful that you told me that. I was, not, aware that I wasn't supposed to do that. I'm grateful you're here. Thank you. And he was like, you know what? He said, you're so pleasant. He's like, I was going to give you a ticket, but he said, I'm just going to tell you because I know you're not going to do it again. He's like, but I hope you have a good day. And I was like, I'm so blessed for him, because I could have took that a whole different way.
Yeah.
I could have created the energy that I was expecting. And it didn't happen that way. It's like I said, whether you think you will or you think you won't, you're right.
You're right.
And if I would have went into that situation, super negative about the interaction with the police, I would have been right.
Absolutely.
So in that situation, even when I'm dealing with police officers, especially because I was an officer of the court as well as an attorney, and I still feel like they're my kinfolk no matter what, and I feel like the people around this earth are my kinfolk as well. But I still feel even a connection to them, and I try to understand their perspective. But when I'm interacting and I'm stopped or I see them, I'm grateful, and I say thank you even before they've helped me or served me or provided some type of benefit. So it's gratitude and thankfulness
Yeah.
that I would say.
That's wonderful. So, what do you think is the main message or takeaway for the folks at home?
Start creating conversations in your community with people that don't look like you. You know, it starts with you. Have those conversations and encourage the people that look like you to have those conversations as well. because coming from you, you have a lot more power than I would having telling them to have those conversations. So just start creating those conversations.
Absolutely. So, where can the folks at home find you?
Yes, so you can find me on social media. My name is Nselaa Ward, so I'm going to spell it for you because everybody they butcher the spelling, which is I understand. But my name is Nselaa, Salah. The N is silent. Nselaa. My last name is Ward, Ward. So you can find me on Instagram at Nselaa Ward. You can find me on Twitter at Nselaa Ward. I'm not as active on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook are my babies. My Facebook page is Nselaa Ward fan page, so you can reach me there also. The website of my firm, I'm a business architect, so I help people take their hustle to an enterprise level. In addition, with the people, the clients that I work with, I also help them to build their authority. So I put them on stages around the country because my clients generally don't, they don't want to just be an attorney. They want to be the Johnny Cochran of the industry or the Susie Orman of financial literacy. So I put them on stages so that they can get in front of audiences, so that they can create that authority. And I also help them to maximize and create a digital stream of revenue also. So my website for the firm is ninavafirm.com, and that's Ninava firm.com, firm.com. You can reach me on any of those aspects. I'm going to give you also a bonus. I have a text-in number. My number is 404-410-0200. One thing that I created was the 7 steps to overcome misplaced fear. And it basically has 7 steps that you can use when you feel like you want to call the police on somebody that doesn't look like you. Things that you can do as an alternative. So if you text me on that number, 404-410-0200, I will send you that 7-step guide so that you can use it in your community as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really love this conversation. It was good for my heart.
Excellent. Me too.